help them understand and appreciate the fact that they have human rights obligations placed on them and they must respect that. Now, before we started with the development of the National Action Plan for Ghana, we first had to do what we call a national baseline assessment on business and human rights.
Okay.
What that does is to assess the business and human rights environment and see where there are gaps or deficits as far as compliance with human rights is concerned. And we identified a number of areas where a lot of human rights violations are occurring. In the extractive sector, even in the telecoms sector, in the service sector, amongst others. And so this helped us to really know how to proceed with developing the National Action Plan. A National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights is an evolving policy document which communicates the intention of government and the interventions it wants to put in place to deal with the adverse business and human rights impacts identified. So what we have done is to develop this document to deal with all the gaps and deficits we identified when we conducted a national baseline assessment. And I must commend GIMPA. We conducted a national baseline assessment in collaboration with GIMPA, Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, with support from the Danish Institute of Human Rights. So when we finished that, we launched it, I think specifically on the 4th July 2022. We launched that document, and we launched not just a hard copy, we also launched a Braille version.
Okay.
This means we don't want to leave anyone behind. So our brothers and sisters who are persons with visual impairment can also understand the whole discourse on human rights. Then we had to move to the next level, which was the development of the action plan. And an 18-member steering committee, national steering committee for that matter, comprising representatives of key stakeholder institutions in the country, were constituted and inaugurated on that 4th July 2022 to develop the National Action Plan to deal with all these gaps that have been identified in the system. The process was co-chaired by the Office of the Attorney General and Minister.
Clement, I have a question on the National Action Plan.
Okay.
But for now, I want you to, since you have mentioned the baseline assessment report, can you give us some of the common examples of some of the violations that businesses, have done or have engaged in that seem or that constitute a violation of human rights?
All right. So from our national baseline assessment, we found out that in some organizations, they did not allow their members to unionize. Meanwhile, this is a fundamental human right.
Yes.
Workers are allowed to unionize under our constitution. In some instances, we found issues of sexual harassment taking place in some workplaces. In some industries, we found child labor and forced labor. In some instances, we found wage discrimination. We found gender-based violence, amongst many others. And this gave us a good idea as to how to proceed with the development of our National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights to deal with all these issues that we identified.
Now we're bringing this conversation home. We're talking about the role of Chraj. So what happens if a business violates the rights of its workers, of the citizens, are not conscious of the community, etc.? What is the role of Chraj in promoting respect for human rights, and also what are the remedies that are available to these individuals whose rights are violated?
Thank you so much. So I mentioned earlier that the United Nations guiding principles rest on 3 legs: protect, respect, and remedy. The 3rd leg, which is the remedy, is about access to effective remedy for victims who suffer human rights violations. And when you look at the guiding principles that Professor John Ruggie developed, we have both judicial and non-judicial based mechanisms. Judicial, making reference to the courts, so where businesses violate the rights of people or communities, the people can go to court to get whatever remedy they seek. Our constitution, the 1992 constitution, in Article 33, makes mention of the fact that anybody whose rights has been violated can come before the court and seek some remedy. But we do know that there are other non-judicial mechanisms, okay?
Yeah.
We have even the role of faith-based organizations, even chiefs, Chraj, Legal Aid Commission, National Labor Commission, amongst many others who also have a role to play in giving access to effective remedy to victims of business and human rights violations. So as part of our mandate, Chraj in Article 218 of the 1992 Constitution has a responsibility or a function which is public education. First of all, we are supposed to educate the public on their rights, and we must also know that rights go with responsibility. So we educate them on their responsibilities as well. So businesses are also educated on their responsibilities, the human rights obligations that are placed on them. They need to know, we sensitize them, and help them as much as possible not to violate these rights. And so in our National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights, we have enumerated a number of interventions and a number of things we want to do to help even businesses to comply with business and human rights. One of them is education, educating the businesses, and we're helping them develop certain basic tools that will help them monitor the situation in their businesses, including maybe having business and human rights desks, which are manned by personnel who we can train so that they can spot any likely violations. We also help businesses to do human rights risk assessments. We can also help them conduct what we call human rights due diligence, amongst many others, so that as much as possible, they reduce the violations. I mean, sometimes, like I said earlier, inadvertently, they commit these violations. And so we want to help them to, as much as possible, reduce the violations. And even where they occur, we help the victims assess remedy. So Chraj as an institution is a national human rights institution where people whose rights have been violated, and we've seen that when you look at our case statistics over the years, we have a number of business and human rights violations that are reported, some unfair termination. I've personally done cases that involve unfair termination. I've done cases on sexual harassment in the workplace and all that. So Chraj also exists as an institution to provide remedy to some of these victims of human rights violation. And also we sometimes issue advisories to government and the state and various institutions to pay attention to certain violations that they may not have been paying attention to. So recently, we have noticed that based on the work we are doing, a number of businesses are even approaching Chraj to help them conduct business and human rights impact assessments in the course of their operations, or even conduct business and human rights due diligence. Last year, I had a privilege of even having a day seminar with the Ghana Employers Association, those in the horticultural sector, where I trained them on how to spot some of the business and human rights violations and how to deal with them. And the feedback from that training was very, very good. They said there were things they didn't know, including like not allowing even their workers to go on leave. Some they don't even give them break. The unsafe working conditions and all that. They all pledge to go and work on these things. And we are excited about some of the reforms that are coming based on the work we are doing in this space.
If you just joined us, you are still watching the live stream of Chraj And You. And right now, we want to acknowledge some of the comments that we are receiving on our platforms. This conversation on business and human rights seems to resonate with a lot of people. And so we have comments coming in. I'm just going to read a few of them. Some of them are questions that our resource person would have to provide responses to. The first question I see here is that are businesses and human rights obligation for only big companies? And this question comes from Odonko. Odonko. Yes, please.
All right, thank you for the question, Odonko. Business and human rights obligations are not only for big companies, they are for all businesses, whether small, medium, or large. Like I gave the example earlier, the red oil seller in the market also has human rights obligations not to add chemicals to the oil to make it reddish that will be harmful or injurious to the health of the customer or consumer, because the consumer has a right to health, even a right to life. So the small business owner in the market who is selling red oil, in an attempt to make profit, should not add chemicals that will make the oil look attractive for the buyer or consumers to come and purchase. Even the bus conductor or the trotro mate also has business and human rights obligations. Those who take trotro will tell you that sometimes some of the mates get up in the morning because they are in a hurry. They may not even brush their teeth. They may not even bath. And then they will be posing all kinds of health challenges to their passengers. All these are business and human rights violations. So business and human rights is even in the minutest issue you can think about. So they belong to all businesses, whether small or large scale.
All right, we have a comment from Okowayote Mensa. He says, it binds every business, not only to big businesses. Every business needs human rights or works with people. Therefore, all businesses must respect human rights. We have another comment from Randolph Amankwa. He says, Dr. Kadogbe, very lovely, lively, kind-hearted man. I love him and his submissions. We have another comment from Seth Obobi. He says, Dog, I'm watching live. We are at King's Law Faculty. Love you to the max. We have another one from Betty John Bosco. He says, good morning. I have joined from Laura Chraj office and I am enjoying the program. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And so we continue to the next segment of the conversation. And this is the time where we talk about Ghana's National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. You have been fundamental from the beginning till the launch of this event. And so, Clement, for the purposes of this conversation, why is it important for Ghana to develop, or why was it important for Ghana to develop a national action plan?
Thank you so much. So Ghana was one of the countries that endorsed the United Nations Guiding Principles. And during the third cycle of the Universal Periodic Review at the United Nations Human Rights Council, Ghana supported the recommendation from its peers to put mechanisms in place to deal with all the business and human rights issues that are bedeviling the country, particularly in the extractive sector. So Ghana accepted this recommendation in 2017. And so the state needed to take steps to develop a national action plan to deal with all these issues contained in that recommendation. And so the process started somewhere around 2019 with a national baseline assessment. And then in 2020, because of the advent of COVID, things stalled a bit. But later, work picked up. We completed that work in 2021. And in 2021, we had a national stakeholder consultation to validate that national baseline assessment report, which eventually got launched in hard copy and braille on 4th July 2022. And that day also saw the inauguration of the steering committee tasked by the Attorney General to develop an action plan on business and human rights within 3 months. But it will interest you to note that we've spent close to 3 years developing the plan.
Wow.
Why so? Because we adopted what we call a human rights-based approach in developing the plan. Of the 55 countries in Africa, Ghana is the 5th country to have developed the NAP. And mind you, there was so much pressure on Ghana to develop its plan because, as I mentioned earlier, the whole conversation about business and human rights started really when His Excellency Kofi Annan was the UN Secretary General, a native of Ghana. So his own country should lead the process. And so that is why I believe even the organizers of the annual African Business and Human Rights Forum chose Ghana as the first country to host that in Accra in 2022, then followed by Ethiopia in 2023, Kenya last year, 2024, and then Zambia this year, just a week ago. So we adopted a human rights-based approach, and what that meant was that as a 80-member steering committee, we couldn't tell ourselves that we knew what the issues were, so we were going to sit in Accra and develop a plan or framework to deal with the issues, and just throw it to government to accept, and then we go back to sleep. No, we realized that the issues are on the ground, so we needed to go around to hear from the people. So we traveled the length and breadth of this country, went to all the 16 regions of Ghana, where we engaged in stakeholder consultations. In every region, we met with the public sector, we met with the private sector, and based on some interview guides and a matrix we had developed, we solicited inputs from them, and they were so frank. There were things we didn't know. And so this opened our eyes, and it even broadened the findings or the gaps or deficits that were revealed in our national baseline assessment. Having finished that, we realized there was even the need to do some further consultation because business and human rights obligations impact people differently. For those who are vulnerable, they are even worse affected, like women, children, persons with disability, amongst others. So after this national consultation, we realized there was the need to even consult other groups separately, targeted consultation. So we met with women groups, we met with youth groups, we met with the Trades Union Congress, and we also met with the persons with disability, the disability community. And the issues were a lot. I mean, and this really opened our eyes to develop targeted interventions and policy proposals to deal with the issues affecting these people. Because as I said, the impacts are varying in nature. They affect people differently. So you needed to come up with recommendations that will meet everyone and deal with the issues. So indeed, we are excited, and I must say this, not because I was a member or the secretary to the steering committee. Ghana's NAP is the best so far in Africa. I'm not the one saying it.
I think we deserve to clap at this point.
I'm not the one saying it because, interestingly, just after the 11th of July this year, when we launched the NAP, many people have been doing reviews. And you go on LinkedIn, you go on other internet sites, and academics have done reviews and shared it, saying that Ghana's NAP is the best so far. And that is how it should be, because I keep saying at every fora or wherever I get the opportunity, and even I made that call even in Lusaka, Zambia, just last week, that I think every NAP should build on the previous one. So before we started the development of our NAP, we listened to Kenya. We looked at the Kenya NAP because they were the first countries to develop it. We looked at what they did, and we saw where the gaps were, and we saw that we had to fill in the gaps. We listened to Uganda. And in fact, when we were having the training for the steering committee, which was proudly supported by the UNDP, we had some experts coming from all the way from Thailand and even Sierra Leone. We heard from Uganda how they went about their process. And we saw where the gaps were. We told ourselves we were going to improve on that. So we looked at all the NAPs existing in Africa at the time, and we saw that no, there was a need to do a massive improvement. That is what we did. One of the things we found missing in some of the NAPs were that there were no major stakeholder consultations done. And so it meant that practically it would be quite difficult to implement the NAP. In fact, for one of our sister countries, when you look at their NAP, it's just an 8-page document, which really doesn't say much compared to ours, which is about 101 pages, and then massive stakeholder consultation across the regions of Ghana, and even targeted consultations. You say that ours is so robust, very practical, very pragmatic. And we have even had some African countries coming here. I remember last year on 2 different occasions, Frederick Ebert Sifton sponsored some participants from some other African countries to come here and learn from Ghana's experience. And also last week on Monday in Lusaka, I had the privilege of sharing with a number of African countries how we went about our NAP. And even earlier this year in April, I was invited by the government of Ethiopia to come and share with them because they have also started developing their NAP. And so we went to share with them how to go about this. So the NAP has come at the right time, and we believe is going to change the face of how business is done, because we have a number of very practical and workable recommendations and strategic interventions that will go a long way. So Ghana is now the 5th country in Africa after Kenya, Uganda, Liberia, and then Nigeria to have developed a NAP. The UN is very excited about this development, and they, even last week in Lusaka, they were calling on all the other African countries to follow our example and also develop NAPs to deal with the business and human rights issues that they are facing in their respective countries.
I was honored to be a part of the launch of the NAP. It was a very beautiful ceremony. And so congratulations to you and all the other members of the National Steering Committee, to the team for the great work that they have done, setting an example for other African countries to follow suit in order to develop a more robust NAPs for their respective countries. We have a comment from Diana Frimpong. She wants to know, what is very unique about Ghana's National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights?
Thank you very much, Diana. There are so many things which make Ghana's NAP very unique. One of them, as I alluded to earlier, is the fact that we do not want to leave anybody behind. So our NAP has even a hard copy version and a braille version, so that persons with visual impairment can also appreciate what is contained in the NAP. None of our other sister African countries have a braille version of the NAP. Again, when you look at our NAP, we also have a monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework. None of the other African countries that have developed NAP have this. And we did this because it is not just about developing NAPs. The NAP must be implemented. And this monitoring, evaluation, and learning network seeks to monitor closely the implementation of the NAP to ensure that whatever targets we have set for ourselves are being achieved, and we can even review as we go along. So there are reporting mechanisms where every year all the institutions with responsibilities under the NAP are reporting to Chraj, which is the coordinating body, or in other words, Chraj is the secretariat for the NAP implementation. And so they will be reporting, and then we will send those reports to the mother body, which is the high-level implementation committee, HILE, which will be chaired by the Office of the President and has representatives from key stakeholder institutions to provide strategic direction on implementation. So this is very unique. We also have a communication and a communication strategy for even communicating our NAP, and this is also unique. Apart from that, our steering committee was unique because it had representatives from all the key stakeholder institutions. We didn't find this in some other countries. A few weeks ago, I was on a panel discussing the NAPs in Africa, and you hear representatives from some of these countries saying there was really no consultation done, but we did a lot of consultation, including targeted consultation, to ensure that everybody's voice is heard in the NAP. So when you pick our NAP, You hear the voice of civil society, you hear the voice of persons with disability, you hear the voice of women, you hear the voice of children, you hear the voice of youth, and everybody who matters in society. So these are a few of the things that are very unique to Ghana's National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights.
Building on implementation, Clement, we all know, I think that you would agree with me, that implementing the plan is where the real test lies. And so, can you just tell us how Ghana is going to ensure that this plan that we have developed, that is being praised all across the world, how are we going to make sure that it just does not stay on paper but is implemented to the fullest?
All right, thank you so much. So yes, developing the NAP is one thing, implementation is another thing. And implementation largely, even though it's going to be collaborative, government must drive the process. That is why even though the development didn't start with government, because I alluded to the fact earlier that first there was a baseline assessment which was developed, led by GIMPA and Chraj. When that was completed, we realized there was the need for government to now drive the process, government to commit itself to the process. So we first engaged the Ministry for Business Development, because a few years back we had a Ministry for Business Development. We engaged the minister and he bought into the idea, but just when we were going to move to the phase of developing, that ministry was collapsed. So now we had to fall on the office of the Attorney General, and the Attorney General and Minister for Justice graciously accepted it and committed to the process. So government itself committed some funds to the development of the process, and that is why the Office of the Attorney General and Chraj co-chaired the process, indicative of the fact that government was committed to the process. So after we finished the development, we officially presented it to government, and you would recall, having been at the launch, that the document was launched by the representative of the Attorney General. Yes. At the time, the Attorney General was out of the country, stating emphatically that government was committed to the process. The next thing is that cabinet has taken note of this development, and government even wants to have a bipartisan adoption in Parliament.
Okay.
So there has been discussions with the Office of the Attorney General on the next steps. And even before this is done, somehow the plan is even being implemented.
Oh.
Because a number of recommendations we have made in the plan are being done already. For instance, one of the recommendations we made is to have a strategy for the blue economy, which is our oceans and river bodies and all that. And just a few weeks ago, I was tasked by the commissioner to represent the commission at a forum to validate Ghana's strategy for the blue economy. We have seen just last week, Ghana Investment Promotion Center is developing or is reviewing its act. Chraj was invited to make inputs into that bill. And so all across, you can see that recommendations we have made are beginning to. We made mention of the fact that even everything must be done to see to the adoption of the affirmative action bill. Even before we could launch the NAP, that was adopted. Yeah. So we are seeing very visible signs of government commitment to the process, and even Parliament as an institution. On the 7th and 8th of August this year, we engaged through the support of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And that tells you that the international community is even following us closely. We had engagements with Parliament's Human Rights Committee, where we took them through what this whole NAP thing is about, what the business and human rights thing is all about. And they were so enthused, and they are more than willing and ready to help us in taking the process forward. Likewise, the Committee on Constitutional Bodies has also indicated its readiness to help us. In fact, they sent us an invite to engage with us, but a day to the date they gave us, the chairman and the ranking member had to travel out of the country. So they are just looking at engaging when Parliament resumes pretty soon. So I can tell you confidently that government has committed to taking this process forward, because every time when government appears before the United Nations, these questions are asked. And as we speak, Ghana is a member of the Human Rights Council, which is just for a period, and we have that duty or obligation to ensure that we are even strong advocates and implementers of the business and human rights guiding principles that we have domesticated or accepted to implement. So I think that commitment is there, and we are happy even with the support or the willingness that even our partners are willing to give to government to ensure that this National Action Plan is not just sitting on the shelf, but is implemented to the letter.
Clement, briefly, can you just highlight some of the interventions that have been designed in this NAP in order to address business-related human rights violations?
So one of the good things about our NAP is that we have given responsibilities to various stakeholders. And so you have a number of institutions, including the judiciary, Parliament, Ministry of Trade, Chraj itself, the Office of the Attorney General, the Presidency, even development partners, the National Development Planning Commission, even the Statistical Service, because we need statistics, disaggregated data on all that is going on. So all these things are being done. So we have very practical recommendations. Even the police have responsibilities under the NAP, including arresting businesses that commit human rights violations. You will recall that a restaurant a few years ago, there were some human rights infractions where a supervisor poured pepper on the face of one of their workers. This is a typical human rights abuse. So the police had to come in, arrest, prosecution was done. So we have responsibility for everybody that matters. And the National Development Planning Commission, for instance, is supposed to help the MMDAs adapt these recommendations and strategies into their annual work plans. That way, they would implement them. Again, because all these stakeholders have been consulted in the process, there's that likelihood of voluntary compliance. Okay, so they will voluntarily comply with the obligations placed on them. And so as part of the annual work plans, they will have things they want to do for the year. They will have BHR desks or focal persons that will ensure that these things are done. And the courts, Chraj, Labor Commission, and the rest are also there to come in to ensure that the third leg of the framework, which is access to effective remedy, is also complied with where businesses violate human rights. So many numerous interventions that I may not even be able to mention, including Chraj conducting public education across the country to ensure that businesses implement these guidelines, and then even the interventions. We also have, as one of the recommendations, an annual human rights award and even a rating scheme where we can rate businesses in terms of their level of compliance. So maybe a particular business is A plus or B plus or C minus. That way, it improves their ratings for people to do business with them. That way also, businesses will begin to know where the violations are, so that they will take action to deal with them. Because, recently, the European Union, which is one of the biggest markets for Ghanaian products, came out with what we call the EU Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. And what that directive does is that if you are a particular business that does not comply with business and human rights obligations, they will blacklist you. They will not accept products from your country.
Yeah.
So the country itself, in order not to lose out, is taking steps to ensure that all products that are exported to the EU market and other markets are business and human rights compliant, in terms of not having child labor issues,
that's very important.
And amongst many others, very numerous to recount.
Clement, I'm just going to go over a few other comments that we have on social media, after which I'll take your last words or your last comments for today's episode. I have here Ayombil Renok Joseph, he says, good morning, watching from headquarters. We have Jifa Koku. He says, thanks you for the education, Doc. I have Efo Yesuto. He also says, good morning, madam. Greetings to the man with the versatile potentials. Thanks for educating us.
Thank you.
We also have Tavia Eve. She says, thanks for the education on business and human rights. And so, Clement, can you kindly give us your last words on today's conversation on business and human rights?
Okay, thank you. I thought I was going to have the whole day because there's a lot to say.
That's true. That's very true.
But just to conclude by saying that any business that wants to do well must respect its business and human rights obligations, or must respect the rights of the people for whom it exists.
Yes.
Whether they are individuals or they are communities or what have you, you must respect their right. That way, you will enjoy some goodwill from them, and then you will do your business, make your profit, whilst not violating their right. But even where rights are violated, it's important that the businesses and the communities or the victims come together to fashion out a very workable solution, or the courts and the other non-judicial based mechanisms are available to deal with these violations or abuses. And to the businesses out there, I want to encourage you to understand what this business and human rights discourse is all about, because it will inure to your own benefit in the long run, and take steps to ensure that you put in mechanisms to mitigate the adverse impact of your business operations by conducting human rights impact assessment, by conducting human rights due diligence to deal with the issues. And Chraj as an institution is always available to help you in this regard. And a good number of businesses have started developing sexual harassment policies. Chraj has assisted a number of them, and other guidelines to deal with the human rights issues that are confronting them. And so the institution is available. The services of Chraj are free. So make use of the services of Chraj. And to the individuals out there, come to Chraj if you feel your rights have been violated. And Chraj is always available to help you get some effective remedy. If Chraj as an institution cannot get that remedy you are looking for, one of the things contained in the Chraj Act is that the commissioner can go to court and seek any remedy available to victims of human rights violations. And all these are free of charge. You will not pay anything. So visit any Chraj office near you. We exist in many of the districts across the country, all the 16 regions, and we also have 2 or so sub-regional offices, and the head office is also there where you can seek remedy. Call or knock on the doors or offices of Chraj. If you don't even go personally, you can send a mail, or you can even place a call, and Chraj is ready to listen to you. So visit any office of Chraj and have your human rights violations investigated and dealt with for you.
This is where we draw the curtains on today's episode of Chraj and You. A big thank you to our resource person, Mr. Clement Kadogbe. He is the focal person on business and human rights at Chraj, for the great insights that you have shared. And to you, our cherished viewers and listeners, for always making the time to join us, for sending in your comments, your questions.
But if I could catch you, yes. I think it is important that I use this opportunity to acknowledge all our sponsors or development partners who helped us in developing the National Action Plan. First, the government of Ghana. We also have the United Nations Development Program, and they are still even with us. As we speak, they are going through some procurement process to help Chraj develop what we call a public education cartoon in various languages to educate the public on the NAP. We also have the Frederick Ebers Shift Tank. They've been very supportive. We have Oxfam Ghana, very, very supportive. We have the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in West Africa. We also have Action Aid. They've been very, very supportive. And a host of other development partners who have been on this journey with us. I want to use this platform or opportunity to acknowledge them and to also call them to come on board as we start the phase of implementation. And to all the steering committee members and the technical committee members who have been on this journey with us, I want to say thank you to them, and thank you to everyone who has been interested in this work. Thank you so much.
If you are coming across this live stream for the first time, this is Chraj And You. We thank you very much for joining and watching. Please remember, or feel free to connect with us on all our social media platforms at Chraj Ghana. You can, as Clement said, if you have experienced or witnessed any business-related human rights violation, kindly reach out to the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice via email at complaints@chraj.gov.gh, or visit any of our offices nationwide, and an officer would be available to assist you and to take your complaints. I am Rufina Dimbwe Palvi. Do join us next month for another interesting and educational time on Chraj And You. Until next time, have a beautiful Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Chraj And You, a communications platform for information sharing and public engagement. Chraj And You, a communication